And we repeat it, we repeat it, we repeat it, we repeat it. And then eventually you show a person one thing and it triggers all of those things. Now, if I show you this, what brand springs to mind? Gosh, you're so quick, is it? So this, I was wondering if I would actually get it. But yeah, I mean, we look at the red, we look at the cowboy, we look at the Montana imagery, and we automatically think of Marlboro. And it's no accident, because Marlboro have spent billions of pounds getting us to think that way. We talk about hearing aids being a negative thing. I can't think of anything more negative than cigarettes. They kill you. In fact, they have to replace their customers that they kill every year with new customers. And they have to target the people that don't know any better. So they tend to go for teenagers who can't even smoke legally. But they don't turn this, they don't use this, and they don't sort of say, right, this is a negative to us. They sort of say, right, we're going to turn this negative into something that we can use to market. So we sort of say, okay, teenagers can't use it. So if you smoke, you're a rebel, you're grown up. You see what I mean? They take the negative and they turn it into a positive. So we need to, I'll just say as well that when they came up with those associations, they didn't sit round a table and say, okay, let's gather in a load of people who smoke and ask them how they see themselves, what type of people use cigarettes, and let's show more people like that. They said, what do we want people to associate with our product? And that's what happens now. So that if you smoke Marlboro, and then you will be associating yourself with all of that imagery of the free spirit, the independence, all of those things. And also you will know that because everybody knows about that, then society will be seeing you in the same way, apart from obviously the lung cancer and everything else. But so we have to say, what associations do we want people to have with hearing aids, and don't sort of take the lead from society. And we have to put those associations there. So who uses hearing aids currently? This is the association. It's the deaf, hard of hearing, and the elderly. Agree? Okay, and that's because there's been such a strong association over the years through classical conditioning, usually from us, some of its history, that sort of says, we associate the hearing device, not with hearing, but with the condition. In fact, all the talks that we've heard, there have been lots of talk about the condition. We also reinforce the idea of the elderly. Whereas when we're trying to reach the 3 people we currently leave behind, they look at this and they see it as being irrelevant because they do not see themselves. Oh, I didn't realize that was still in there. I'll just explain why this is there. Vegetarian appeals to the attributes of an individual, whereas meat-free is the attributes of the product. Can you see the subtle difference there? So when we have a product that's associated with the attributes of the individual, we will exclude everyone that does not see themselves as having those attributes. When we do the attributes to the product, we widen up our audience. So they say, well, we're not deaf, we're not hard of hearing, we're not elderly. So basically, they're going to avoid all of those types of messages. Now, we think that it's because they're in denial or something, don't we? We think it's because they're being stubborn or pride, and sometimes people tell us that. But actually, the 3 people we leave behind is something else is going on, and it's called the actor-observer effect. And it sounds very technical, but all it is, say, for example, you see somebody bash their car. What runs through your mind is, they're a lousy driver. So we think it's caused by their attributes. But when it happens to us, we say it's something to do with us. No, so it's something to do with the situation, don't we? So if we bash our car, it's not because we're a lousy driver, it's because the sun was in our eyes or we're distracted. Can you see the difference? Okay, so when we see somebody having a problem with their hearing, we look at them and we sort of say, she's going deaf, it must be their hearing. It must be something to do with them. But by contrast, when we have a problem with our hearing, we blame it on the situation. And this isn't some trickery, by the way. It's not them hiding from the truth. It's actually simply something called the availability heuristic, which I haven't got time to go into now, but it's very interesting if you want to look it up. So our approach, though, is to get better at our counselling to try and convince them that they have a problem, that they do have a condition, damn you. Whereas actually, what's running through their minds is, but if I admit that I have a condition, that means I need hearing aids. And hearing aids aren't relevant to me because I'm not deaf, I'm not hard of hearing. Because for me, it's the situation. Now, those words in the red there, they're all labels. Now, labels are very powerful in shaping people's attitudes as well. A stereotype is a type of label. Now, if we look at these cans here, we have no idea what's in them because there's no label on them. And so we don't know, are we to approach or to avoid that for our dinner? So labels enable us to separate out our thoughts and tell us what to approach and what to avoid. For example, if one of them says cat food and one says pineapple, we're not going to approach cat food for our dinner. So we're going to avoid it. But if we're a cat and we could read, then we too would be approaching the cat food. And we would be avoiding the pineapple, I think. I haven't got cats, so I don't know. Labels are a type of mental shortcut, so they bring up all extra information, just as we saw with stereotypes. But also labels can be deliberately stuck onto a chain of thoughts. So if we take normal hearing, that's a label that has been stuck onto an idea or a concept. Deaf, hard of hearing is also a label. So we take these three people that we currently leave behind. Where do we put them? How do we label them? Do we label them over here? That's where their family would label them, isn't it? Or, because from their point of view, they've got normal hearing, they just find that in a few situations they have difficulty. Because our labels create gaps for people, and so we can actually classify people by the labels, so they will say, well, that doesn't apply to me, I will avoid or I will approach. So we use labels to create ready-made attitudes. We know, of course, that there's actually a gradient. You're not either normal hearing or deaf and hard of hearing. There's a gradient, so you can be just outside the range of normal. But the thing is that we've got nothing to put in between there to show what a label for that gradient. In optics, they do have labels. On one side, you've got 20/20 vision. On the other side, you've got blind or partially sighted. Interestingly, 20/20 vision doesn't say normal eyesight, although we all know that it probably means that. An optician will tell you there's different grades, but 20/20 vision to us is normal eyesight. But it's actually, the label is actually telling us what we can do with our sight. Ours, by contrast, we haven't got something like that. In between, you've got short-sighted and long-sighted. But look here, the framing is based on the vision. You are sighted. You're not long-blinded or whatever, I don't know what you call it, but you're long and short-sighted. So when we think of people wearing glasses or spectacles, we don't say, oh, that means they're going blind, or that means they're partially sighted. We say that they can see well because they're wearing glasses. So when we come back to here, we need a label for this bit here, because otherwise these three people don't want to be deaf, they don't want to be hard of hearing, but at the same time, their family want to put them somewhere because they certainly haven't got normal hearing, because of the actor-observer effect, and also the medical side of things too. So what should we be using there? I actually don't have an answer for this, although I do think that maybe we should be considering something like high-pass hearing or low-pass hearing. So high-pass hearing will be where you can hear the high frequencies, but you can't hear the low frequencies. And low-pass hearing will be where you can hear the low frequencies and so on. Maybe. You can probably come up with something better. Maybe we should put it on the forum or something for either. When we come back to glasses, glasses is a tool that enables you to do all of the things that you'll be able to do if you could see well. So it keeps you seeing well. By contrast, when we talk about hearing aids, they have such a strong association with the deaf and the hard of hearing, as we saw before, that it's almost as if you get your hearing aid and you become a member of the deaf and hard of hearing club. And that's why people avoid it, because they don't want to see themselves that way. So it's not a membership card. We should be thinking of this differently. So when we bring out beautiful instruments like this that really do look the part and really are discreet and they work well and things like that, what happens is we say things like, it's so discreet nobody will know. I don't know whether they actually use that. But we have the mistake of calling it a hearing aid. Because when we call it a hearing aid, we make such a strong connection back with hearing aids of the past, including our practice goes back to 1841. We started doing hearing aids in the 1920s. So we've got a whole lovely collection of old hearing aids. And this links to all the memories of hearing aids that people have seen in the past. And because hearing aids are so obvious in the past, they were always associated with the problems. Even if somebody was using an ear trumpet, they'd still say, what? And so that instrument became associated with the condition rather than the solution. So when we say, we say, okay, people don't like hearing aids because they don't want people to know they're deaf or hard of hearing. But actually, they don't see themselves as deaf and hard of hearing. And that's the problem. The problem also, so it's a problem of relevance here, but the other problem is that we create a ready-made attitude, because what we say to the rest of the world, who aren't yet ready to be in that category, we say to them, well, actually, it's a bad thing to wear hearing aids. Nobody should see it because it's an embarrassing thing. So we're reinforcing another negative stereotype. What we really need to do is link the hearing device to normal hearing because it enables you to have normal hearing. And I know what you're all thinking, like, or not all of you, but some of you were thinking, okay, you can't solve normal hearing. But that's not the point. The point here is that if you use hearing technology, you'll be able to do, certainly in the categories that we're talking about of those 3 people we currently leave behind, because often they have a much milder reduction in their hearing. And very often, according to, I think Harvey Dillon has said that with current technology, some people are going to be able to hear better in background noise than if you've got normal hearing. So this is incredible. We're moving to another dimension now. So we shift the associations, and these people feel much more happy then with getting hearing technology because it's linking them to normal hearing. And we'll come back onto this in a moment and see how we do it. So now, for our ready-made attitude, who uses hearing aids? Not the deaf and hard of hearing. It needs to be who uses hearing technology. Maybe we should just use a different term so we're not triggering those stereotypes. I actually have another word that I think we should be using, but I'm not ready to reveal it yet. I won't be revealing it today, sorry. But the associations we want is those who want to keep their hearing working at its best. That's why people should be using hearing technology, not to say, I've got a condition. But why would they want to keep their hearing working at its best? Because if we can understand that, then those are the things that we want to bring in. And it comes back to our 2 friends, avoid and approach. Remember that people avoid loss, but they approach gain. So at the moment, what loss are people avoiding by using hearing technology? They're not avoiding hearing loss. They're not avoiding that at all. They're actually getting hearing loss in their minds because it actually says, I've got that deaf and hard of hearing badge. What loss do people avoid when they use hearing technology? I can't hear anybody. Sorry. I need something. No. But they avoid missing the best conversation of their life for a start. They avoid missing the punchline. They avoid missing the opportunity in business. They avoid missing lots of things. And we actually ran this as an advertisement. We had it on the back of buses and things, and it definitely changes people's attitudes towards hearing technology because people don't want to miss anything in life because they're losing something. If we take this, people avoid social isolation. Okay, well, we all see people around us who look as though the world's drifting them by. People don't want to be like that. So one of the things that they will do is they will avoid being a fadeaway. They don't want to fade away. We avoid threats to self. So we don't want to take a hearing instrument because it says that we're deaf or hard of hearing, which is a threat to ourselves because of mortality and all of those things we talked about. And it's a condition which makes us feel needy, not powerful, which makes us avoid things. But also, people approach things to be consistent to themselves. So how can people use hearing technology to be consistent with themselves? Well, again, this is one of the lines that we use. All that I am, all that I can be, I bring to the moment. That's why I keep my hearing working at its best. Let's come back to this idea of avoiding loss. Now there's lots of research out there that shows that human beings are loss averse. They will do whatever. There's all these clever experiments that were touched upon yesterday in one of the presentations where people actually avoid loss as much as they can. Now, the thing is that we call it hearing loss. And we've been banding it around over the last 2 days, and we'll be banding it around for the rest of the day, I'm sure, because it's just become part of our vocab. But whenever we're talking to the 3 people we currently leave behind, we should never be talking about hearing loss, because automatically that sends a signal to avoid. But we say things like this. So we have to get into the habit of, just as we're about to say hearing loss, can we reframe it? So I try to say, that's why I keep saying reduction in hearing range. So it might not be the best terminology, but at least it gets away from this loss that has such a strong association with the grieving process.